There's a lot of innate wisdom when it comes to watching fairy tales of all things. And what's not an exception to that is the fairy tale about Peter Pan and Tinkerbell and the Lost Boys. Now, I promise I haven't just gone crazy and I'm not just talking about random topics, but this is actually one of the most key topics I can find when it comes to my work with clients, mainly predominantly working with men, and how it relates to not just the individual problems that they are experiencing, but the big picture problem which binds them all together. And it's something called Peter Pan syndrome. Now, Peter Pan syndrome is not just a cool thing that I made up. It's actually a phenomenon which you can look up on the internet right now. I'm not sure if it's a completely clinical psychology definition, but it is a really interesting symbolic way of representing what so many people and so many men specifically feel like they're going through in life. Now, what this has to do with is accountability, responsibility, and living life on your own terms. If this sounds like you, it's not really something which should be ashamed about or you should be worried about. It's what a lot of people actually are experiencing, but they just can't quite put it into words. They can't quite take the abstract bundle of problems that they're experiencing and put it into a real tangible definition. So my name's Aaron, I run this YouTube channel called Unconscious Flow, which we always talk about shadow work and conscious coaching in conjunction in order for you to live a better life on your own terms, right? Now, that's enough about that, because what you're here to talk about, or what you're here to listen to, is this Peter Pan syndrome, right? And there's a few kind of ways that we can break this down. And don't worry, we're going to be getting to actionable and practical tips for you in the beginning at this, or at the end of this rather. But at the start, I kind of have to flesh it out to begin with. So if you've seen Peter Pan, if you know about the Lost Boys, if you know about Captain Hook and Tinkerbell and all that kind of good stuff, it can seem kind of like trivial, but fairy tales speak to our unconscious, they speak to our subconscious mind, and they are very cued in to imagery. Not just imagery that maybe you could argue that we possess on an ancestral level, right? I don't really want to get into that because it's not what I'm an expert in. Or it's definitely something which is culturally conditioned because we grow up watching these kind of fairy tales. But when you look at Peter Pan as an example, what you see is a boy who doesn't want to grow up, right? Now, this is where this definition comes from. And it's also, his band called the Lost Boys. It can't get more symbolic than that. How many men or how many people go around life feeling lost, feeling like they still feel like that teenager they were 10 years ago, even though they might be having a successful career. They might be doing the things that they love. They might be with somebody that they love. But all of this is external, and you can't run away from the internal. You can change the external as much as you want. But if this inside of you, whatever you want to point to, right, still feels the same as it did 10 years ago, that's when we're going to run into problems. And that's why I'm talking about this, because a lot of the clients that I work with actually struggle with some form of this problem, okay? And it's to do with taking accountability, taking responsibility, but also the third one, which is in some ways the most important, is about living life on your own terms, okay? So many people and so many clients that I work with are kind of just at the end result of whatever they thought they should do, or whatever their family members thought they should do, their friends, their colleagues, their whatever. And a lot of the coaching actually is about undoing that, undoing those introjections, we can call them. If you don't know what introjections are, I recommend you to go and look at the introjection video, which I will link in the description below. It's about undoing all of that unconscious programming, and then allowing that person to actually be there in their authenticity, whatever you want to call it, and listening to that and seeing what direction they want to go in. So how do we talk about this in a bit more of a tangible way, right? So I'll give an example. I had working with one client who's also, a YouTuber, quite a successful YouTuber in the fitness niche. And he's already on the surface living life on his own terms, whatever you want to call that, right? He's going after the things that he wants. He's built a really good physique. His dating life is really good, starting to make more money. But all of that stuff is kind of secondary to he wanted to be a fitness influencer, and now he is, right? Great. You think perfect, right? And he's done really good work, and he's obviously not, somebody who lacks in a lot of different areas, but there was a subtle thing which now, put into context, makes so much sense, which is there was still so many storylines from parents from childhood about who he should be, and so much of our work was about undoing that so that he could actually be who he wanted to be, right? So how does this relate to you, the person who's watching this, okay? I want you to look at your life, and you can write this down, you can draw it out, whatever helps you really look at this in a real honest way and not just kind of glance over it, right? In real depth, and say, how much of the stuff that I'm doing right now is a result of something that I actually wanted to do versus what I just ended up doing because I got told to do this thing and I just never stopped, and here I am. And this is a really, really eye-opening exercise, okay? Because what it will tell you is the percentages of something that you actually did authentically versus something that you did non-authentically. Now, the question of authenticity is something that we can go into another video if you want. If you want that, you can comment below. Because I think it's overblown and it can actually be quite harmful in a lot of ways. And it can be used to justify a lot of kind of bad behavior on your own part by just saying that you're authentic and being honest when really you're just being, a dick. But that's obviously a topic for another video. But what it is really important to do is to see and to not bullshit yourself in how is my life actually turning out, and will it turn out in 3, 4, 5 years in the way that I want it to? And the only way you can do that is by identifying where you are now. What have you done that you genuinely wanted to do and that came from you, whatever that definition means to you, because it'll mean different things for different people, versus how much of it is just stuff that you were expected to do and now you got used to it. Now, a lot of the time when people really see this in its entirety, that's when they change directions in life, right? So for my own example, I really like martial arts. I always like martial arts. I always kind of like the striking martial arts a lot more. However, me and my friends, one of my good friends back home in the UK, we decided to just try out Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I didn't like it at first. I kind of like doing striking a bit more, Muay Thai, that kind of thing. But I kept doing it because it's what we both kind of enjoyed doing. And over time, I really grew to like it. And in fact, I grew to love it. But there was a moment when I was suddenly 6 years later doing 6 to 8 hours of training a day, 5 to 7 days a week, a few days where I just do a couple of hours of jiu-jitsu training, right? Those are kind of my off days, if you can imagine that. Where I kind of just realized, and it wasn't all at once, it was an amalgamation of things, where I realized that, wait, this is something which just turned out into something that was really cool, but it wasn't really done with full intention. Like now that I'm actually living this lifestyle, I realized that this lifestyle is cool, but it's not actually really what I wanted to fully do. Because I was locked in the gym, like I said, 6 to 8 hours a day. I wasn't really like that. I liked the grind of getting better at something. But I always wanted to move around a bit, go traveling, all that kind of more shallow stuff. But really what it felt like is this kind of freedom, because it is a kind of freedom. Even though it might not seem like it, eating the right thing, doing the same thing, learning the same thing, going to the same place, that is a freedom for a lot of people. And it's not to say that one is freedom and one is the other. But for me, that wasn't freedom. That was something else. That was something which felt like a real big obligation. But it was in that moment that I realized that I didn't really choose this with intention. And that's why in this area of my life, it might have been going pretty well. I was doing pretty well in competition. At least during the end of it, I had a bit of a rough patch before I left. I was doing very well. I was doing pretty well with it. But there were other areas of my life which I wanted to get more into, like doing more spiritual practice, clearing up some things therapeutically with shadow work, also getting out there a bit more at the time with dating and relationships and traveling around and being with other kind of friends other than just jiu-jitsu friends, right? Where we just kind of talked about the same thing. Not that there's anything wrong about that, but that's just what I really wanted to do. And when I realized that, that's when, it was kind of done by accident, but that's when I moved countries to go and live with my mentor and my other friends, right? And now here I am speaking to you, working with clients and in a beautiful place in Central Asia. The point is that intention always comes, it always needs to come into this area if you are suffering from something called the Peter Pan syndrome, where you feel like a teenager trapped in an adult body, right? Because that's what I felt like, because I'd so much gone into this area of one area of my life, and I hadn't quite done the work to be able to bring that into the breadth of the rest of areas of my life. I just kind of wanted a really big change. So this leads to the point which I originally started talking about, which is about responsibility, accountability. And you do that with intentionality, seeing where your intentions are, and then seeing where the things that you are doing that aren't from your intention, what can you do to change that? Can you do anything to mitigate it? Maybe it can be a big kind of change. Maybe it's not a big change. Maybe you just do small kind of steps to slowly change where you're going in your life to something which you prefer, right? And that leads me on to the kind of last theme of this topic, which is to do with living life on your own terms, or living life more playfully, okay? So living life on your own terms is something which is talked about a lot, and it relates to this because there's a certain powerlessness that comes with being in the Peter Pan syndrome kind of thing, right? Where you kind of feel like, oh, I feel like a boy or a teenager and there's nothing that I can do about it. So there has to be kind of an element of playfulness to snap you out of this, because at the beginning, it might be a little bit hard to just fully go into, oh no, I'm just gonna be with intention. I'm gonna write out all of my life, see what's in it with intention and what's in not, and I'm gonna get rid of that, and I'm gonna do more of this and all that kind of stuff, right? There has to be an element of playfulness, right? Because life can either be playful or it can be quite tragic. You know, it depends on how you look at it, depends on your perspective. So we talked about intentionality, we talked about accountability, we talked about responsibility, okay? Now, how can we use these things? So you've got the exercise of putting all those things together to give you an accurate representation of where you are. Now, it's very simple. All we need to do is see where you want to go. Is where you are right now is that going to grow into the place that you want to be, right? This is why intentionality is the key to getting over Peter Pan syndrome, because Peter Pan syndrome is characterized by a loss of agency, a loss of power, because we attribute being a child or being a teenager to a loss of agency if compared to being an adult, right? An adult is powerful, it's mature, it's a symbol of reaching the final form, even though that's not really what it means, right? But at least symbolically, that's what it means, okay? So we can just pull from that, right? If that's what being an adult is, then we can look through a lens of an adult, even though we might not be fully there embodied wise, right? So we see where we are right now, we use where we're seeing right now to predict where we are going to be in the future, and then we see if that's actually what we want, right? Because the key to get out of this kind of syndrome is to move with intentionality. A lot of my clients at the start, they kind of don't want to look at the issue. They kind of push it away. They kind of hold it away at arm's length, right? Because they know where to go. People know what the obstacle is. But the problem is when you're trying to remove the obstacle, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of energy. And we as humans, for however way you want to look at it, we kind of want to stay in homeostasis as best we can. Even if that homeostasis is not good for us long term, it just feels safe, it feels easy, it feels like something that we know. That's why that saying, better the devil you know, is a saying, right? So we want to cut that out. We want to make sure that that is not a reality we're living in, and we do that exactly how I just said. We see how we're living right now, we see what came out with intentionality and what didn't come out of intentionality. Then we use that to predict where we think we're going to be in a few years' time. We evaluate if that's where we want to be, and then from there, we can make an informed decision about how we want to structure our life right now. Now, there's a bunch of stuff I couldn't mention in this video. There's a bunch of shadow work that we would have to do one-on-one in order to really break through what's kind of constructing a lot of this reality for you right now. If you're not quite ready to do one-on-one work with me, that's totally fine. I have a whole playlist of 5 videos about how to actually do practical shadow work on yourself so you can remove unconscious blocks, so you can remove limiting beliefs. So I can suggest you go and subscribe and you look at that. If you do want to do one-on-one work, I have a link below and we can just do a chat. I don't do any hard sales, I don't do any hard selling, and we kind of see where you are in your journey, see how that relates to me and how I can help you, and then we move forward from there. And if you're not ready for any of that, then I keep on bringing out videos, 2 to 3 videos every week on topics like this. So you can stay around for that, you can pay attention to those, and yeah, I hope to see you soon.